disabled child was left to die in the dump, but a four-legged angel appeared. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always awesome to see how far our stories are reaching. Sitting in a wheelchair by an empty table was Noah Carter, a 9-year-old boy with ash blonde hair and large, deep eyes. He'd been paralyzed in both legs since he was 3, the result of a car accident that took his mother's life. Since then, he lived with Mike Thompson, his stepfather, a tall man with a stern jaw and cold eyes. Mike barely spoke to him. To Mike, Noah was a burden. He didn't share breakfast or ask how Noah slept. That day, Mike walked into the kitchen with his usual sour look. He poured himself coffee without glancing at the boy. "Are you taking me to school today?" Noah asked in a soft voice, barely hopeful. Mike let out a grunt and slammed his mug on the sink. "No, and stop asking questions. I don't have time for your stuff," he said sharply, lighting a cigarette and leaving without another word. Noah stared at the empty mug in front of him. He didn't cry anymore. He'd grown used to silence as his only answer. His wheelchair creaked as he moved away from the table to look out the window, watching cars pass by, wondering if one might stop for him. The days were always the same. Mike left early, came back late, sometimes drunk, always angry. Noah learned to heat his own food in the microwave and move his wheelchair around the house as best he could, but he never went outside. No friends, no visitors, no kind words. One night, Mike came home more irritable than usual. Work, debts, loneliness, and a disabled kid who, in his words, never should have been born. "This ends tomorrow," he muttered to himself, staring at the blank TV screen. Noah overheard him from the hallway. His heart raced, but he didn't understand what it meant. He didn't know that those words would change his life forever. The next morning, Mike woke him early. For the first time in months, he put a jacket on Noah. He didn't say where they were going. Noah thought maybe they'd go to the park, like when his mom was alive. "Where are we going?" he asked with a thread of hope. Mike didn't answer. He just picked Noah up and placed him in the back of his old pickup truck, slamming the door shut. The city faded quickly behind them. Streets, poles, houses, everything turned dry and desolate. They stopped in front of a grim place, a huge town dump. The smell was unbearable. Crows circled overhead, and the wind dragged plastic bags and rusty metal scraps. Mike got out, opened the back, and lifted Noah without a word. "What are we doing here, Mike?" Noah asked, confused, but Mike didn't reply. He set Noah down on a dirty blanket next to a pile of junk and stared at him, as if trying to justify the unforgivable in his mind. "I'm sorry, I can't do this anymore," he said in a flat voice, and he left. Noah sat still. The sound of the truck's engine faded into a distant hum. Then nothing, just the wind, the crows, and a silence that wasn't like the one at home. This one hurt more. Hope didn't die. It just hid, trembling, in the smell of abandonment. Night fell like a heavy curtain over the town dump. The sky was thick with clouds, no moon in sight, and the cold cut to the bone. Noah Carter lay on the dirty blanket, wrapped only in the jacket Mike had put on him for the last time. His eyes didn't move. He was still, as if his small body had frozen in time, without air, without direction. The buzz of insects mixed with the metallic creak of the wind moving cans and junk. Every now and then a crow's caw echoed, distant but threatening. Noah didn't cry. He had no tears left. Only his dry lips and shallow breath showed he was still alive. "Mom?" he whispered with his eyes closed. "If you're watching, can you send me something? Anything, please." And then, as if the universe had heard his silent plea, something changed. Through the fog of the dump, a furry figure emerged slowly. First, 2 bright, clear eyes. Then, a bulky shape, covered in mud, with scars visible on its right leg. It was a big dog, maybe a German shepherd, old but strong. It limped slightly, but its movements were sure. His name was Max, or at least, that's what his old human companion, a retired officer who'd passed away months before, had called him. Since then, Max wandered aimlessly, like a soldier without a war, searching for something his instincts couldn't quite name, until that night. Max approached the boy cautiously. His wet nose sniffed the air, then the blanket, then Noah's pale face. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just sat beside him, watching with a mix of compassion and alertness. Noah opened his eyes a crack and met that gaze. It wasn't an ordinary look. It was a silent promise. "Did you come for me?" he said in a hoarse, barely audible voice. Max lay down beside him, gently resting his head on Noah's still legs. His body gave off warmth, safety. For the first time in hours, Noah felt something like comfort. Minutes passed. The dog didn't move. If a noise came close, his ears perked up. If a crow swooped near, he let out a low growl, just enough to scare it off. It was as if he knew this boy couldn't protect himself. As if he understood in an instant that he had to become his legs, his shield, his guardian. And that night, as the sounds of the dump sang their song of abandonment, Noah fell asleep with a paw on his chest, like a furry hug of hope. God didn't answer with thunder. He sent a whisper, and that whisper had 4 legs and smelled like wet earth. Dawn broke without color. The sky barely lightened with a dull, grayish glow, as if the sun itself was ashamed to look at that place. Among the damp trash and rusted debris, 2 figures stayed still. A frail boy wrapped in a blanket that no longer kept him warm, and an old dog, watchful like a flesh and blood sentinel. Noah woke up shivering, his lips purple and throat dry. Feeling the warmth of Max still beside him, he wasn't sure if he'd dreamed the dog or if he was really there. But when he moved his hand slightly and touched the thick fur, he knew it was real. "Hi, Tertius, you're still here," he whispered with a small smile cracked by the cold. Max looked at him without moving, just with his eyes, as if he understood every word. Then he stood slowly, stretched his front legs, and shook his back. He circled once and came back to Noah. This time with more purpose, he started licking Noah's hands, cheeks, forehead, slow, warm, as if saying, "I'm with you. You're not alone." Noah laughed, a small, hoarse, but genuine laugh. He hadn't laughed in months. That sound was the most human thing to come from his lips since his mother's death. "I don't know your name, but I'm going to call you Max, like the dog in the movies I watched with Mom." Max tilted his head, as if he approved. Noah's stomach growled. He hadn't eaten in over a day. Max sniffed the air, walked a few steps away, and started digging through the trash. He came back with a piece of hard, dirty bread, still recognizable. He dropped it at Noah's feet and sat again, watching as the boy broke it with trembling hands. "Thanks, Max. You're better than any person I've ever met." That day, Max didn't leave his side for a second. If Noah coughed, he came closer. If Noah tried to move, he helped by gently nudging the wheelchair with his nose. When the sun hit its peak, Max vanished for a moment among the piles of junk. Noah got scared, but didn't shout. He waited. A few minutes later, Max returned. This time he carried a half-full plastic bottle of water in his mouth, still sealed, probably tossed by some dump worker. He dropped it in Noah's lap and sat, panting, tongue out, satisfied. Noah drank. Then he cried, not from thirst or cold. He cried because, for the first time in a long time, something was doing everything for him, without asking for anything in return. And so the second day passed. No words, no explanations. Just a boy with a broken soul and a dog with an unbroken heart, facing abandonment together, like 2 soldiers forgotten by the world. That night, as the shadows swallowed the dump again, Noah rested his head on Max's back and whispered in his ear, "Maybe Mom did hear me. Maybe you're the answer." Max closed his eyes. His breathing was calm, deep, but his ears, always alert, stayed tuned to the wind. When the world leaves you behind, sometimes it's not a hand that comes. It's a soul with paws and a noble gaze. The third day dawned with thick fog covering the town dump. The air was heavy with moisture, and the silence was deeper than ever. Noah lay next to the remnants of his blanket, his eyelids heavy, his voice nearly gone. His small body was starting to give up. Max knew. He'd watched him all night, not closing his eyes once. Every whimper of pain, every shiver, every time Noah mumbled, "Mom," in his sleep. Something inside the dog, beyond training or memory, told him time was running out. Protecting wasn't enough anymore. He had to do more. He had to find someone. He stood before Noah woke. He licked the boy's cheek as a temporary goodbye. Noah opened his eyes with effort. "Where are you going?" he whispered. Max didn't answer. He couldn't, but his eyes said enough. Then he turned and ran. Noah watched him disappear into the fog. For the first time since arriving there, he felt afraid of being alone. But something in his heart whispered to trust. Max ran for hours. He crossed the highway, dodged cars, navigated muddy fields and forgotten alleys. He didn't bark. He just ran. His instincts guided him. He knew he had to find someone with a heart clean enough to listen, to understand what he couldn't say. Then, at the edge of a country road, he saw an older woman walking slowly, a grocery bag in hand. It was Margaret Evans, a widow who lived alone with her chickens and her prayers. She'd gone out that morning like every Thursday to buy bread and milk. She didn't expect to find a muddy dog staring at her from across the road. Max approached without aggression. He sat in front of her and tilted his head. "What are you doing out here all alone?" Margaret asked, frowning. Max stood and gently tugged at her bag. Then he took a few steps, turned, and looked at her again. "You want me to follow you?" Again, Max stopped and looked back. Margaret, intrigued but not afraid, nodded to herself. "All right, if you were put in my path, there's a reason." And she followed. The journey was long, tough. The mud made walking hard, and more than once she thought about turning back. But something in that dog's eyes, something she couldn't explain, told her it was worth it. When they reached the edge of the dump, Margaret covered her mouth with her hands. "What is this place?" Max ran through the piles of trash, leading her without pause. Finally, he brought her to the exact spot where Noah lay, eyes closed, pale, barely breathing. Margaret knelt immediately. "Good heavens, it's a child, a child!" Noah opened his eyes just a bit. His voice was a broken thread. "He brought you. He found you." Margaret stroked his forehead tenderly, holding back tears. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe now. You're not alone. That angel came for you." Max lay beside him. For the first time in days, he closed his eyes. He knew he'd done his job. When no one hears an innocent's cry, sometimes it's a furry heart that carries it to the right ears. The air still smelled of dampness and rusted metal when Margaret, hands trembling, dialed 911 from her old flip phone. Her voice, usually calm and steady, shook as she described the scene. A boy in a wheelchair abandoned in a dump, weak, dirty, nearly out of strength, and a dog that wouldn't leave his side. Yes, he's alive, but he's barely breathing. He's a boy, small, blonde, maybe 9 years old. No, there's no one else, just him and a dog. The operator told her not to move him, to stay there until paramedics and police arrived. Margaret nodded, though no one could see. She hung up and knelt beside Noah, covering him with her thick wool coat. "They're coming, sweetheart. You're back in this world now. No one's going to hurt you anymore," she said in a motherly tone, stroking his hair. Max stayed alert, watching the horizon with his body tense. He didn't trust humans yet, not after what he'd seen, what he'd sensed in Noah's scent. Fear, abandonment, despair. Soon, a white ambulance, old but working, appeared among the trash piles. The sirens were off out of respect for the boy. 2 paramedics stepped out. Tom Bradley, a sturdy man with a kind face, and Emily Parker, a young woman with red hair. Seeing the scene, they both froze. "How did this kid end up here?" Emily muttered. Tom knelt to check Noah's vitals. Seeing the boy's thinness and bruises on his arms, he frowned. "He's dehydrated, has a fever, but he's alive. And that dog," he looked at Max. "He's not moving, like a shadow." Margaret stood slowly. "He's the one who brought me here, dragged me from the road, made me follow. He's a hero, truly." Emily knelt and reached to pet Max, but he stayed stiff. He didn't growl, but he didn't let her touch him. Only when Noah, in a faint voice, said, "It's okay, Max," did the dog lower his head and allow the touch. They moved Noah carefully to a stretcher. Margaret rode with him in the ambulance. Before the doors closed, Max jumped in without asking, sitting by the stretcher. No one had the heart to make him get out. At County General Hospital, doctors worked to stabilize Noah. Meanwhile, the police started investigating. His full name came up when they checked the serial number on his wheelchair. Noah Carter. He'd been enrolled in school until 6 months ago. His mother had died in an accident. His only listed relative was his stepfather, Mike Thompson. The social worker assigned, Jessica Harper, a blonde woman with a serious face but kind eyes, took charge of reading his file. This boy was legally handed over to that man, and no one checked on him after that. No follow-ups, no visits, like he just vanished quietly. Margaret, who hadn't left Noah's side in the observation room, looked up when Jessica walked in. "What's going to happen to him?" Jessica sighed. "We're going to seek justice. First, we need to make sure he recovers. But that man, that Mike, he's going to pay for what he did." Max, lying by the hospital bed, perked up his ears. Noah was asleep, but his hand rested on the dog's neck. There are truths that sleep under layers of silence, but when love wakes up, justice starts to breathe. Mike Thompson came home like nothing had happened. He opened the door, turned on the TV, cracked open a beer. It was raining outside. Inside, the house was quiet, the same dirty calm that had been rotting between those walls for months. He didn't flinch at the empty wheelchair in the corner or the dirty plate no one would clean. To him, it was all part of a cleanup, a release. Better this way, it wasn't a life for either of us, he muttered, slumping onto the worn-out couch. But what Mike didn't know was that Noah Carter's name was now circling every police station in the county. Pictures of the boy alongside Max were on local TV, with headlines about abandonment, criminal neglect, and a miracle dog. That same night, 2 police officers, Sergeant James Carter and his partner, Officer Sarah Mitchell, showed up at Mike's door with a warrant. They knocked once, twice, no answer. "He's in there, the light's on," Sarah said. James stepped back and pounded on the door. "Mr. Thompson, County Police, open the door." Mike got up, annoyed. He opened the door, faking surprise. "What's this about?" "Do you know a minor named Noah Carter?" James asked, straight to the point. Mike pretended to think, frowning. "Yeah, he was my stepson. But he ran away. A few days ago. I haven't heard from him." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "And you didn't report him missing?" Mike shrugged. "I thought he'd come back. He's done it before." James stared at him for a long moment. Then he showed a photo from the hospital. Noah, lying in bed, pale, hooked to tubes, with Max beside him. He was found in a town dump, alone, malnourished, dehydrated, and according to his medical records, unable to move on his own. Mike went silent. That pause was enough. "You're under arrest for suspected aggravated child abuse, criminal neglect, and attempted homicide," Sarah said, pulling out handcuffs. "No, wait, you're blowing this out of proportion. You don't know what I had to put up with because of that kid," Mike shouted, struggling. "That kid is a victim, Mr. Thompson. And his voice, which you tried to silence, now has witnesses," James said firmly. As they led him to the patrol car, neighbors came out to watch. No one approached, no one said anything, but more than one looked away, knowing something had been off for a long time, and they'd never spoken up. In the hospital, Noah slept deeply. Max stayed by his side, not moving an inch. Margaret sat in the corner of the room, knitting quietly. Jessica, the social worker, walked in with a look of quiet satisfaction. "They arrested him. We have enough evidence to keep him in custody." Margaret looked up. "And the boy? He'll need time, lots of love and stability, but now he has a name, he has a story, and he's not alone." Max stood, circled once and lay down again. His breathing was calm. He knew it too. The first monster had fallen. Some think evil hides in the dark, but sometimes evil sleeps next door, with open windows and a closed heart. Days passed with a slow, almost sacred rhythm in room 204 of County General Hospital. Noah, now more awake and nourished, started speaking in full sentences, eating without help, smiling at unexpected moments. But no one could deny his best medicine had a name: Max. The dog never left his side. He slept at the foot of Noah's bed, joined him for physical therapy, and even helped move the wheelchair with gentle nudges of his nose when no one was looking. He didn't bark or make a fuss. He was just there, silent, unwavering. "Was he always this noble?" asked Sarah, the physical therapist, a young woman with blue eyes watching their bond with warmth. "I don't know," Margaret replied, sitting by the window with a cup of tea in her hands. "I think he was just waiting to find someone to protect again." Noah could now move his arms with less effort. His cheeks had color, and his eyes, though still carrying invisible scars, no longer held fear. They had calm, hope. One afternoon, as Margaret helped him brush his hair, Noah looked at her with unusual seriousness for his age. "Can I ask you something weird?" "Of course, sweetheart. Why did you help me?" "You didn't know me." Margaret thought for a moment. Then she gently touched his cheek. "Because God doesn't always speak with a voice. Sometimes he sends signs. That dog came for me, and you were at the end of that path. That's reason enough." Noah looked down, moved. "Do you think Max was sent by God too?" "I don't think, Noah. I'm sure he was." In those days, Jessica, the social worker, started visiting more often. She brought papers, reports, questions she answered carefully. One afternoon, as she left the room, she stopped in front of Margaret in the hallway. "I know it's not the time or place, but we need to talk about his future. Noah has no direct family. Mike's custody has been revoked and the criminal case is moving forward. He could go to a foster home, but honestly that would be a step backward. Margaret looked at her, unsurprised. "What are you asking, Jessica?" The woman lowered her voice. "Would you consider it? I know you live alone, have no kids, but you've been here since day one and he trusts you." Margaret didn't answer right away. She looked out the window, where dry leaves fell from the trees, and thought of her house, her lonely mornings, her silent Sundays. "Give me a day, I'll talk it over with someone who doesn't speak, but understands more than anyone." That night, Margaret took Noah to the hospital garden in his wheelchair. Max walked beside them. They sat under an oak tree. No one spoke for several minutes. Then Noah broke the silence. "I don't want to go to a place with kids I don't know. I want to stay with you. And him." Margaret smiled. No tears, but her eyes were wet. "What if I told you I'd love for you to live with me? There's an empty bed waiting for you and a big garden and cookies, lots of cookies." Max barked once, clear, firm, like a seal of approval. Noah nodded with a small but real smile. "Then I'm not broken anymore, am I?" Margaret knelt to hug him carefully. "No, sweetheart, you're blooming. Wounded souls don't seek pity. They seek fertile ground to grow again." The morning was clear, the kind that feels handcrafted by a patient God. The wind blew gently. The sky was clean and County General Hospital, which had been a refuge for weeks, was now a starting point. Noah looked at himself in the small bathroom mirror in his room. He wore a light blue shirt with wooden buttons and a knitted sweater Margaret had made. His hair was clean, combed to one side. He looked different, but not because of the clothes. There was something in his eyes. Light. The shy light of a kid starting to believe the world might not be so cruel. Max was at his feet, tongue out, tail wagging slowly. It wasn't excitement. It was certainty. He knew this day was different. Margaret walked in with a quiet smile and a manila envelope in hand. "All the papers are ready. Jessica says we'll sign the final documents with the judge this afternoon. Officially, you'll be Noah Evans, if you want that last name." Noah looked at her, confused at first. Then he understood. It was the first time someone offered him a name like a gift, not a forced label. "Evans is your last name?" Margaret nodded. "I've carried it my whole life, even after losing my husband. And I don't know. It feels fuller if you have it too." Noah looked down, thinking. Then he touched Max's head and answered with a sweetness that broke every wall. "Then, I'd like him to be Max Evans too. Can he have a last name?" Margaret laughed, eyes full of emotion. "Of course he can. If anyone deserves it, it's him." Hours later, in a small room at the county family court, Judge William Foster, a white-haired man with a calm voice, read the adoption decree aloud. The scene was intimate. Jessica, Margaret, Noah, and Max, who'd been given special permission to be there, lying by the wheelchair. "As of this moment," the judge said, "Noah James Carter will be legally known as Noah James Evans, under the custody and care of Margaret Evans, who takes full responsibility for his well-being, education, health, and emotional growth." Margaret took Noah's hand. He took a deep breath. "Does that mean no one can take me away from you?" "It means this is your home now, and no one," Margaret said firmly, "absolutely no one, will separate us." The judge looked at the dog with a faint smile. "And it seems we also have a furry witness to this bond. Let the record show that Max Evans has sealed this union with complete loyalty." Everyone laughed. Noah too. A clear, open laugh, like something inside him had finally broken free. That night they arrived at Margaret's cabin, a rustic home at the edge of a forest, surrounded by tall trees, free-roaming chickens, and a wooden swing that creaked in the wind. Noah was carried to a room that smelled of lavender. It had books, a small star-shaped lamp, a blue blanket, and a window facing the sky. "Can I sleep with the window open?" "Of course, sweetheart. The air here heals your thoughts," Margaret said, kissing his forehead. Max jumped onto the bed with a precise leap. He settled beside Noah as always. Before closing his eyes, Noah whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Margaret stood in the doorway for a few seconds, watching the scene. The sleeping boy, the watchful dog, and a peace you couldn't buy or seek. You just found it. A home isn't a roof, it's a place where the soul can stop trembling. Life at the cabin settled in like an old, warm blanket. Days passed with simple breakfasts, garden walks, therapy visits, and reading aloud on the porch. Noah now handled his wheelchair like it was part of him, and though his legs still didn't work, his spirit walked freely for the first time. Max, as always, was shadow, guardian, brother, and angel. One October afternoon, the sky glowed with golden and purple hues. Margaret was baking cornbread in the kitchen, while Noah and Max played in the backyard, surrounded by dry leaves that crunched like ancient sighs. Noah tossed a ball, not far, but enough for Max to chase it excitedly. But this time, on his way back, something was different. Max stumbled. It was a split second, a tiny slip. But Noah noticed. "Max?" he asked, worried. The dog reached him, dropped the ball, but his breathing was off. He was panting harder than usual. He lay at Noah's feet as always, but this time took longer to settle. Noah frowned. He'd never seen him like this. "Are you tired?" Max just looked at him, but something in his gaze was shifting. Not pain, exhaustion. Margaret noticed the change too. That night, while Noah slept, she took Max to the local vet, Dr. Robert Sullivan, an older man with white hair and wise hands. After examining Max gently, Robert sighed. He's a warrior, but his heart, it's more tired than he lets on. He's got a severe heart murmur, probably from birth, worsened over time, and I'm afraid the effort of the past days has been too much for him. Margaret stayed quiet, swallowing the lump in her throat. Is there anything we can do? All he needs now is calm, love, and real rest. He's done more than most humans do in a lifetime. The rest is up to the heavens. That night, Margaret brought Max home wrapped in a blanket. Noah woke when he heard the door. Seeing Margaret's serious face, he knew. Is he going to die? Margaret knelt in front of him. We don't know when, sweetheart, but we do know his body can't keep up anymore. What he did for you, not every being does that. He gave everything, even his breath. Noah stroked Max's back, tears in his eyes. Then I want his last days to be the best. And they were. For the next few weeks, Noah devoted himself to caring for him. He read him bedtime stories, shared his food, sang softly while brushing him. He talked to him like he understood everything because he knew he did. One afternoon, Max couldn't climb onto the bed anymore. Noah asked for a mat to be brought to the floor. They slept there, together. You don't have to protect me anymore, Max. I'm not scared now, but if you want to stay, stay. And if you have to go, just promise you'll wait for me up there where everything's nicer, Noah whispered, hugging his neck. Max lifted his head slightly, licked his cheek. Then he settled and closed his eyes. That was the last night. In the morning, Margaret found Noah asleep, holding Max. The dog wasn't breathing anymore, but his face held a peace impossible to describe. Noah didn't cry when he woke. He just stroked Max's fur and whispered, "You left when you knew I was okay, I know." Margaret wrapped him in a long hug. They held a quiet vigil with soft music and the wind coming through the window. That afternoon, they buried him under the oak in the garden. Margaret made a wooden cross with her own hands. Noah placed a plaque. Max Evans, forever guardian, the one who never left me alone. Some heroes don't wear capes. They wear paws, scars, and a heart that asks for nothing but gives everything. Winter slipped away quietly as if it knew that house had cried enough. The snow melted slowly, revealing wet grass, the first shy wildflower sprouts, and under the old oak in the garden, a slightly tilted wooden cross surrounded by pebbles, Noah arranged every morning with patient hands. 3 months had passed since Max's departure. The pain hadn't fully gone, but it had changed. No longer an open wound, but a deep mark that taught Noah to see life differently. Noah had grown stronger, still in his wheelchair, yes, but his body was different, firmer, more agile. Therapy, paired with Margaret's steady, quiet love, had worked miracles science couldn't fully explain. But more than his body, his gaze had changed. One morning, Margaret was baking cookies in the kitchen when she heard a noise outside the porch. She stepped out and saw Noah alone, slowly pushing himself along the dirt path to the mailbox. He had a notebook in his lap. "Where are you off to so early, sweetheart?" "To drop something in the mail," he replied without looking back. "It's important." Margaret smiled, not pressing. Later, when he returned, she offered him a mug of warm milk. Noah took it, but his thoughts were elsewhere. "Want to tell me about that letter?" Noah nodded after a moment. "I sent it to a police station, the one that had Max before they lost track of him. I want them to know everything he did for me. I want them to remember him for what he was, not just a retired dog. He was a hero." Margaret stayed quiet, touched. Tell me in the comments, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story so far? Your opinion means a lot to me. Then she leaned over and kissed his forehead. "I'm sure they will, Noah, because you're making him eternal." Weeks passed. One day, a white truck pulled up to the house. A man stepped out, uniform, badge, and a noble face weathered by years. It was Lieutenant Michael Hayes, who'd worked with Max in his final years as a service dog. "Can I speak with Noah Evans?" Margaret invited him in. Noah, seeing him, sat up straight in his chair, nervous but calm. "You were his partner, right?" Michael nodded, holding back emotion. "Yes, son. Max was my best partner for 6 years, saved my life twice. After I retired, they transferred him. I lost track of him, thought he'd been adopted. Never imagined he'd end up on the streets." "He didn't end up on the streets," Noah corrected. "He found me." Michael pulled out a box wrapped in blue paper and set it on the table. This was his medal. We never gave it to him officially when he retired. No ceremony, but I think it's time. Noah opened the box carefully. Inside was a gold medal with the police department's initials and the inscription, "For exceptional service and bravery." "Can I put it on his tree? I think Max would love that." That afternoon, the medal was hung on the cross under the oak. Margaret made lemonade. Michael stayed to share stories about Max, stories Noah listened to with shining eyes. Before leaving, the lieutenant approached him. "You know, some are born to be protected, and others to protect. You were both, but now I think it's your turn to protect." Noah looked at him, curious. "Protect who?" "Those who've been through what you have, the ones no one sees. Maybe one day you'll tell them this story, and then Max will come back, in every word." That night, Noah opened his notebook. He started writing. Title: "The Day the Sky Sent Me a Dog." His fingers didn't shake, neither did his heart. And for the first time, he didn't write from pain. He wrote from gratitude. There are wounds that don't heal with medicine. They heal with pure acts, with faithful souls, with the love of a being who only needed a place to stay. 3 years have passed since Max closed his eyes for the last time under the oak in the garden. The cross is still there, steady, though time has worn the wood a bit. Every spring, wildflowers bloom around it without anyone planting them. Margaret says they're a gift from heaven. Noah believes it's Max saying hello. Today, Noah is 12. His arms are strong, his voice clear, and his smile no longer hides. He's still in his wheelchair, but that's never been a barrier again. This year, at the new school where he was accepted, he gave a talk to his whole class about bravery, about being seen, about the difference between a house and a home, and about a dog named Max, who gave him the world back. The notebook where he wrote his story became a small illustrated book. Margaret helped him publish it at the local library, and since then, kids across the county read it. Some cry, some smile, all ask about Max, and Noah always says the same thing. He's here. He didn't leave. He just stopped barking. Margaret, for her part, remains the pillar of their little world. At 70, she has more energy than many younger mothers. She cooks, knits, and makes sure Noah never goes to bed without a story. Sometimes at night, she sits alone on the porch and looks at the oak. She whispers things no one hears, memories, or maybe prayers. A few months ago, a local shelter rescued a litter of abandoned puppies. Noah and Margaret went to visit. They weren't planning to adopt, just to help. But a puppy with light fur and floppy ears crawled to Noah's chair, lay on his foot, and didn't move. Noah looked at him, and for a moment time stopped. "Did you find me too?" They named him Chance, because everyone deserves a second shot. And so, the story went on. Not with the same pages or the same heartbeats, but with the same heart. Because sometimes, what starts with abandonment ends as a legend of true love. Never underestimate a dog's heart. It might be the messenger God chose to save your life. Thank you so much for sticking with this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a ton and motivates us to keep bringing new stories every week. And since you're here, take a moment to check out another one of our stories that's popping up on your screen. Big hug and see you next time. Stay well.